Hey, welcome back to my channel. How are you doing mentally? I had a lot of video ideas for today. I kind of realized that they were all sort of like mental health focused. And then I started realizing how my own journey with mental health and video editing has evolved over the years. I've been doing video editing on YouTube for myself and other creators and brands for the past 10 years. And the truth is, like, I couldn't keep doing this for 10 years if I didn't take care of my mental health, like, almost first. Like, you can't just let your mental health deteriorate online. I mean, you can. We see examples of that all the time, but you don't want to let your mental health deteriorate because then that leads to burnout. Burnout is something that we see all the time on YouTube because you're your own boss. You sort of don't have anyone telling you how to pace yourself. It is kind of hard to come back from burnout because you end up not really trusting yourself. I know every industry has their own form of burnout, but it feels like on YouTube, a lot of our burnout is created by a few things. You really can get to a place where, like, you don't have breaks because it doesn't turn off. There is no closing hours for YouTube. You can post 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. I think a lot of people reach this point where they're like, oh my gosh, I feel myself approaching burnout, but I don't know how to slow down. You kind of have to self-pace, and if you don't pace correctly, you can burn yourself out. You could literally edit and upload every single day of the year, and you see these daily vloggers who do that eventually do burn out because that's not human. Video editing, I think, also like attracts a certain type of person because, you know, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. I've always liked to work. I am an introvert, and so I can focus for long hours and not really be phased, but that can kind of lead to workaholism because you don't really know when to unplug. One of the things that in the recent years that I've had to implement are like boundaries. I feel like I've burned out once on YouTube. When I did, it was because I wasn't taking care of my mental health. And this was probably in 2018. I just had so much on my plate. I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know what my limits were. It's easy to think like, oh, just the more I do, the better it will get. And I think to a certain extent that's true, but not having hobbies outside of being online, worrying too much about the results and forgetting about the pure joy and the journey of creating. Those things, like, even though they seem kind of small and insignificant, and so you can kind of overlook them, they're actually the reason that you can either succeed or fail. One thing that greatly improved my mental health was tracking how much I was actually working. And for my case, in Final Cut Pro, and my MacBook shows me like how many hours I spend in each app every week. And so tracking that on a spreadsheet of like, how many hours am I actually spending in Final Cut Pro? And then making sure that if I spent like way too many hours one week, offsetting that the next week with like not editing as much or trying to minimize the, like, trying to take control of how many hours I'm editing. Basically, it kind of keeps me in check. For me, like, working out in the mornings, I can't get myself to work out later in the day because my willpower is incredibly finite. Working out is the one where I need the most willpower, so I do that like the second I wake up. It helps me feel like I've accomplished something for myself at the beginning of the day, and then I meditate and do skincare and journal and like do all the things that kind of feed my soul. Not only does that help you become a better creator and an editor, but it also like helps you do this long term. By the way, I'm looking out the window all the time. You see me constantly looking off to the left. I don't know my lefts and rights, because having a pretty view is what makes filming a little bit more fun. And that's the thing. You have to think about like, how can I make this more joyful, more fun? Because that's why we started, right? Like, we started because I loved watching YouTube videos and I needed to learn how to do my makeup. And so I started watching makeup videos on YouTube, and this was back in like 2008. So are mental health and video editing at odds? Like, is it not possible to have one without the other? I mean, the big lesson I've learned over the last 10 years is like personal responsibility. I need to say no. I need to know when to stop overthinking, when to just export the video, and how to stay encouraged too, because again, like, those things can really make you feel discouraged and then you want to quit, and that's like burnout. I love video editing, but the days where I don't find myself loving it are the days where I simply pushed myself too much. Like, a boat can't sink unless water gets in. Mental health is having no leaks in a boat. But if you have a leak, eventually it can take you down, even though it feels like, oh, it's just a little leak, it's not that big of a deal, but like, it can kind of blow up in that way. To see things as a tiny leak is an emergency right away. Like, I need to take care of that ASAP, not when it gets to the point where it's flooding the boat. Something I didn't understand at the beginning was that creativity needed boundaries. I thought that creativity without boundaries was gonna be amazing and endless, but that's a really naive perspective because creativity needs boundaries to thrive. There's no conclusion to this other than give yourself a break. If you have any thoughts, leave them below. I would love to hear how you've gone through this, things that help you stay mentally healthy. Yeah, it's an ongoing forever journey, which I'm actually really excited about. I think it's cool that it evolves. Anyways, that's all. My camera's dying, so I've gotta go. Love you. Mwah.